2021年度、国際活動協力賞受賞者、ヤン・ディアク・シュマッカー先生、京都大学、准教授ご所属でございます。この度は大変おめでとうございます。おめでとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
Congratulations on International Outstanding Collaboration Award 2021. And today, Dr. Schmoecker will give us a presentation. And please start your self-introduction.
Well, thank you very much for this award, which I'm very honored about. I'm really thankful for JC, and it's I believe me worthy of this award for this year. So my background is, so I'm German, as in my name, if it's all with 2 dots, so the 2 dots usually give it away. I come from the north of Germany. I'm born in Bremen and then grew up right at the Dutch border. So that's why sometimes also people, my name is also, it's familiar to Dutch people. I studied I did my undergraduate studies in Berlin at the Technical University there. And I was planning there to continue there until my diploma, as it was still called at that time. But then in 1999, I left for the UK. I went to Newcastle upon Tyne, and I did my master studies there. So I got a master degree in transportation management there, under the supervision of Professor Michael Bell. And then he moved to London, to Imperial College London, in early or late 2001, and I followed him in 2002. And then I conducted my PhD studies at Imperial College, partly as a research assistant and partly as a PhD student. And then the connection to Japan comes. It goes in 2002. Yeah, my who is now professor in Gifu, Fumitaka Kurao-sensei. He came to London for a year. We shared the room and we started collaboration. And as one of the results of the collaboration was that he also invited me to come to Kyoto University for 1 year. And I did that in 2005. So in 2005-06, I was at Kyoto University as a visiting PhD student. Then I went once more back to the UK to defend my thesis and to work there for a while. And then from 2007 to 2010, I was a visiting associate professor at Tokyo Institute of Technology. And that was always time limited. And to be frank, I didn't have a big plan to stay very long term in Japan then. But towards the end of that time, I got a call from a professor here from Kyoto that they were just starting the international course program of civil engineering, and that they were looking for stuff to teach in there. And I accepted that. And in October 2010, I moved to Kyoto University, where I'm still now. And I've since then been teaching in this undergraduate program in civil engineering that is taught in English. It's actually the only program at Kyoto University that's taught fully in English on undergraduate level. And so I'm teaching there. And in terms of research, I'm based in the Department of Urban Management. I was first working closely with Professor Satoshi Fuji. And nowadays I'm in the ITS lab, which is headed by Professor Yamada, and there's Satoshi Nako, and we do research together on various aspects of intelligent transportation systems. I think I will tell a bit more about what I'm doing soon.
Okay. So would you give us your activity now on that project?
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. So for this, maybe I share briefly with you a few slides. As I titled this, there's 2 parts. There's education and research, as one does at university. So in terms of education, so this is one of the well, this is the picture or the starting picture of the web page of our undergraduate international course program of civil engineering. So this has been established, this program, as part of the G30 program that probably many will be aware of, an initiative of the Japanese government to promote education in Japan, or education opportunities for foreign students, so programs taught in English. And yeah, so this course runs in parallel to the normal, to the Japanese civil engineering course. And yeah, as mentioned, it's taught fully in English, and the goal is to attract students from outside Japan. Actually, any nationality is welcome, but we mainly get students from China, as well as South Asia, Southeast Asia, as well as some African students, plus Japanese students. So students who pass the entrance exam for Kyoto University and for engineering have then the choice to enter the normal civil engineering program, the Japanese taught civil engineering program, or the international course program. And some Japanese students always take up this challenge and this opportunity to conduct the whole education in English. I think the program has been successful. I think well, we just had an alumni meeting recently, and so we can see that many of our graduates are some are abroad, some are now working at universities, working or studying at universities outside Japan. Some are working, some international of our international graduates are also working within Japanese companies in Japan, and some have also pursued an academic career in their own country or in Japan. Yeah, I'm teaching in this course myself. So because it's mainly currently 8 faculty members. We teach kind of almost, okay, there's some support from what's called the ILAS program here in Kyoto, from liberal arts, but generally we teach all the subjects. So I think that 8 teachers who are involved in this, teaching quite a wide spectrum of topics. So I teach, for example, debate class. I teach engineering mathematics, operations research, as well as integral transformations. Then I teach in a course that's titled Planning and Management of Social Systems. And then I teach transportation management. So my expertise, that's in the third.
すごいですね。So like, just not the main field, like you're teaching. You're teaching all, like, たくさん.
Yeah, I'm teaching certainly more in the undergraduate course than my Japanese colleagues would do. So I would say my involvement in the graduate school is therefore a bit more limited. So yeah, we're teaching a bit more, but I wouldn't say it's not a disaster. We can still manage well. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the international course, and maybe also or the contribution, and yeah, well, well, in the beginning years, it was a lot of setting up this course and promoting the course in Southeast Asia, going to high schools. Of course, to get students for this program, we need to invite at high schools. So actually doing that and promoting these kind of activities in Japan was also my and my colleagues' responsibility in the first years.
So, Schmoecker said, you said that you go to the high school and invite the call to the calls. Is that the 日本の高校 Japanese high school?
No, no. It's foreign high. Well, actually, I should say in recent years, we don't do it anymore, or not that much anymore. It was more in the initial years. We went to student fairs specifically. So, for example, I went to Hanoi to student fair, and then visited through contacts that we had. We visited a number of high schools, for example, in Indonesia, to tell about education in Japan and to talk about this program.
ああ、すごいですね。京都ユニバーシティすごいですね。
Yeah, I mean, there is other universities. For example, I can think of Kyushu University, who has another international engineering program for English students, but yeah, not that many. And so the initiative by the Japanese government was stopped after some years. So it was the G30 program was funded for 5 years. And so after 5 years, then the university had to make a decision whether to actually continue the course or with their own finances or not. And I think I'm glad that Kyoto University continued it. Though as a comment, I would say we would always hope for more courses or for more departments in the university to join this initiative. So then we could have scale effects, right? So I mean, teaching math courses or liberal arts courses for just 10 to 20 students, which is our usual student numbers per year, it's sometimes a bit inefficient. So if more departments would join, it would become much more efficient to do this whole program.
なるほど。
Yeah.
わかりました。ありがとうございます。いや。
So that's shall I continue? Or?
Yeah, please. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So that's about the teaching side of it, and that is in the Yoshida campus, which is where I'm now. And so my then there is research, and so I'm as I mentioned, in the ITS lab, intelligent transportation systems, called Joho. And so the information part, so I think it's always interesting that the intelligent in Japanese is translated as information. So my role in that group, or my research, is mainly focused on public transport issues, not only, but to a large degree, whereas my colleague, Professor Yamada, is more focused on logistics. I put here, this is from our homepage of our lab, and I put here our slogan: creating intelligent and smart transport supported by IT to enhance attractiveness of urban areas. And also here, maybe this has been also one contribution of my of me here in Japan. I think we are one of the very international groups or laboratories. I think I have supervised, if I count, I think it's 20 or even above 20 international students that I've supervised since 2012. Quite a number of students from China, then from Indonesia, Iran, Korea, Philippines, and Taiwan, Turkey, and 2 students from Uganda, including 1 student now. And then visiting and postdoc students we had from France, Germany, UK, Italy, as well as Korea. The picture that you see here is a little bit older, a few years ago, before Professor Yamada joined. But yeah, you can probably even see from this picture how the number of international students that we have here. Some.
All over the world, isn't it?
Yes. I mean of course, as an it's not a problem, but I mean, we have many Chinese students, and they are usually, especially in terms of mathematical, in terms of programming skills, they're usually very good. And also, of course, and the students who apply also have usually very good grades, and it's always a pleasure to accept them. For us, the only challenge sometimes in the laboratory is to find a bit of a balance, in that it's not becoming too much Chinese speaking in the laboratory. So some years, so maybe many Japanese students, especially the master course students, they do job hunting, they do lectures, and they are not that much coming to the laboratory as the foreign students. And so, and sometimes we have a very high proportion of Chinese being spoken in our laboratory. So that's sometimes a bit of a challenge. And we always try to invite also students from other countries to balance that.
That balance is, I think, difficult.
Yes, it's good for all. It's good for the international students themselves, and also for the Japanese students to be exposed to different cultures. Yeah. So if we have the balance, I think it usually works really nice. Yeah. So that's generally about the laboratory, and then I just have a brief introduction of some of my research activities, and maybe that again was recognized as part of the why I got awarded. And I on this picture, on this slide, you see 3 pictures which are related to 3 recent research activities. On the top, it's the HARMO scheme, Harmonious Mobility scheme by Toyota. It's been operating in Toyota City and in parts of Tokyo. And we have been fortunate to have this collaboration with Toyota to analyze usage data of these electric vehicles. So from where people use these vehicles, and we follow questions such as, does shared mobility actually support sustainable transport, or does it actually lead to more kilometers being driven and maybe public transport being replaced by these vehicles? So how can we promote such vehicles, and in what case is it sustainable? And so I think I put this here as research from Japan to the arrow here is to show, to going outside. I think this was one of the research where we could help also to show in a wider context initiatives of shared mobility going on in Japan, also at, for example, international conferences, and to bring also our colleagues at Toyota in contact with initiatives going on outside Japan. So harmonious mobility, a very nice scheme. The second picture, on the right, it's here a picture of a book that I published with Professor Kurashi, so the person I mentioned before, who was in London, who I know since 2002. And so this book was the result of a workshop, and this has now become actually an annual conference series on transit data. So we are looking very much into how, for example, smart card data, possible data, or any of the big smart cards that you have in Japan, right? So that they have very that we have in Japan, that they have very powerful data sets, of course, to analyze and to understand how people are traveling, which can then feed back into how we plan public transportation systems. So in my research, we've been looking at payment data. We have been also looking recently a lot at GPS data of buses, GPS data of buses, smart card data, as well as other forms of electronic ticketing data and usage records, for example, GPS traces of people that can help us support planning public transportation systems. And again, I would say that we have been in this with this research. For example, here we have been working closely with Shizu Tetsu, the public transport operator of Shizuoka, and they've been actually participating in a number of these conferences And again, I think it helped to show some of the initiatives to bring them to also an international audience. So that's why, again, I put it on this slide, Japan to abroad. And the third picture here is about Wi-Fi sensors. So this is in collaboration with Professor Nishida and also his company that produced these Wi-Fi sensors. And we've installed them, for example, in Kyoto, but we also had an international project recently where we also installed some sensors in Israel, actually. They help us to measure the amount of person traffic or possibly also car traffic at places. And so we pick up these places and we use them for advanced modeling of from where to where people are going and what routes people are taking.
Hi.
So. Okay. Yeah. And maybe I continue a bit more. So the next slide. Okay, well, this was just one example of one of our students. So just to explain, so for the HAMO data, the idea that we can use the data, for example, also to then see where in a city we should have car sharing places. Okay, well, I think I skipped this. Then this slide I put in here just to show two of my big projects for which I was and I have been the principal investigator. Both are funded by JST. The one that's on the bottom here, the tourist flow patterns, identification, information provision for safe evacuation. So this was in collaboration with colleagues in Israel to really understand tourism problems, and especially how we estimate number of tourists and their flows. And with a focus on a scenario when tourists might have to evacuate because of a disaster. So actually part of this research was also the aforementioned Wi-Fi sensors. Yeah, I think generally I should say I've been very fortunate here in Kyoto of having very good collaboration with my Japanese colleagues, without whom this would not have been possible. And especially being in Kyoto being such a tourist city, the idea is how we can use our links to also foreign links, and how we can use our knowledge here and international research jointly to address problems and to think about tourism in Kyoto. This has really been a focus of my research in the recent years. The second project, the Daluma project, that's research with colleagues from Munich, Budapest, Madrid. Also Hitachi is involved in this research, or the AI, specifically the AI group of Hitachi. And the idea, so the title says it's deep learning anticipated urban mobility peaks. I just show this one slide here. The overall idea is that we combine map data, that we combine a set of mobility data. That could be, so in Japan, for example, we use spatial statistics from Docomo. Again, we use GPS traces of people. That's in the Japan case. In our European colleagues also use Waze data. They also use they have their own telecommunication data. And on top of that, we try to what I put here as trending data. So, for example, we keep collecting Twitter data, and we keep data such as what is trending in the news or trending through, for example, Google Trends. And we try to combine these three data sets, firstly in simple formats, and then later in deep learning formats, where the Hitachi group is very helpful of implementing such a framework to do the impossible, I would say here, to do something like to predict changes in mobility patterns. So of course, if you can do it perfectly, or it's impossible to do it perfectly, because people, of course, will react to anticipation. It's a bit like as if you could predict the stock market. So yeah, but you can't do it perfectly, but we can do some parts, and we can do some parts and better understanding, okay, there might be a danger, okay, now there might be a danger for panic buying, for example, or there might be a danger for people abandoning a lot of travel, which will then be a huge problem for public transport operators. So can we obtain insights, and ideally can we make predictions of such dynamics, of course, which have been very important and very significant recently towards due to COVID.
Yeah.
So that's so once more back here. So I think these are two of the projects where I would really say that these are research linking Japan and international colleagues, where we have been trying to, or which goes in both ways, coming back to Japan and going abroad. There have been some other projects. So I think one of my long-standing research topics is public transport fare systems, and we have there also a number of collaborations with universities from abroad, from Europe, from in the US, as well as with some former students. We look at car ownership in Indonesia, and but also with I was member of a project headed by Professor Taniguchi Ayako from on mobility management in Asian countries. Okay, so that maybe gives a rough overview of my my research activities.
はい、ありがとうございます。もう
Thank
素晴
you
ら
very
しい。
much.
Thank you very much. You are collaborating with many企業like Hitachi and other university. That is wonderful. すごいですね。
Yeah, I said again, partly, I mean, I have been very fortunate, or many of these contacts have been initially established by the assistant professors actually in our lab. So also there was, I really have to mention here, Professor Toshiyuki Nagamura, who is now at Nagoya University and associate professor there. And for example, through him, the link to Toyota was made. And through him and other colleagues, the link to Shizutetsu were made. And I think then this is a kind of where hopefully, or where I think I can bring in some of, well, my expertise, and then links to show how this kind of research also fits in an international context of internationally ongoing research activity. And Hitachi actually developed the Hitachi link. Yeah, that was actually my key contact at Hitachi. He was actually my neighbor where we are living. And this is just by casual talking, we understood that, okay, actually, it's probably worth thinking about some professional collaboration as well. And we started talking more, and then so this developed really into this formal links, and that we could obtain some funding from Hitachi for our research activities here. So maybe maybe that's one of the sort of messages, but that's something I also want to say, right? So sometimes it's being open to talk to people, and I think that to have communication, and of course then Japanese language knowledge helps to talk to people, to then well, sometimes things just develop. Some research it's not often plannable. In many cases, it's not plannable.
No. Back to the international course, the undergraduate at the Kyoto University. Is there any difficulty, or do you feel some difficulty to teach, or so how do you?
Well, I mean, okay, one recent difficulty, of course, has been COVID. This has been a difficulty, I think, especially for foreign students. Well, some students couldn't even get a visa to come to Japan. So we are still doing most lectures hybrid now. And I think especially for foreign students not be able to meet and to do to sit at home either in Kyoto or in their own country, raises or gives or makes the appearance of feelings of stress and in some cases even depression more likely, and it has been a significant issue, I would say. So that's recently on COVID. So I mean that is really one challenge for the international course. Generally, of course, there is we experience a range of skills for students from different countries, and one. I think there's a general discussion to be made in some sense of whether, well, we could just make a very difficult entrance exam that's the same for all people, for all students from all countries. But that, of course, would put students from developing countries where they might not have had such a intensive education as, for example, students from China at a disadvantage. So in some sense, our policy is to say, okay, if a student is very good in his country, he probably has a huge potential. So therefore, let's invite him. Yeah. So sometimes students from Southeast Asian countries or African countries struggle a bit in the initial part compared to Japanese and compared to Chinese students in their mathematical skills. They might be better in English skills. But many do catch up, I would say. But so generally this wide range of so some students being very good in English, but not that having not that much knowledge or yet of mathematical skills, where other students being much stronger in that, but much weaker in English, for example. That is one of the big challenges also of the international course.
Thank you. 次のさん、なんか質問あります？
そうですね。I think you made a lot of challenges in your research and your teaching activities. And I think it is a very tough thing to do it. Then what makes your job worthwhile?
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a nice question. Yeah. Well, there's of course, if you see outcomes, if you see that's one big part, of course. So to outcomes in terms of being, well, papers being accepted in journals, in books, and so on. You see, well, okay, yeah, there seems to be some other researchers seem to agree at least that there's value in it, and you obtain feedback from other scholars who do similar things, and you start to see maybe not yet direct implementations, but at least also well, I mean, through, for example, the transit data conference series that I mentioned. Yeah, we can really see there how also practice is at least catching up some of the ideas that we propose. So I think that's one thing that feels always very satisfying and that feels motivating. But then there is of course there's an educational or there is a satisfaction if you see that students become adults, that students have learned things, and that students pursue their own way. So I think, well, in meetings with students, if I see, oh, well, this student, last year he was still so shy, but this year he's developing his own ideas, and he now knows how to program things, and he knows how to write things, and he knows how to. You feel like, yeah, well, that's really, yeah, you could contribute to this person actually having learned something, and that's very satisfying, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Do you have any vision for the future?
So, well, in terms of education, yeah, it is, I think, to educate students to be self-thinking and students who know about what a sustainable future will need, what we need for a sustainable future, for students not to become selfish and machines who just want to pursue their career, but to actually really reflect what is good for them, and to develop their own values. In terms of transport, I think recently, yeah, of course I have a vision. My research is a lot about public transport, and I think it's important to keep the role of public transport in some form in the future, though it is changing, especially with the advent of autonomous vehicles. That in some form, I'm not sure when and in which and in which form they really will arrive in our cities. But moreover, I think it's like just yesterday, actually, we had a long discussion again among us with my colleague from Hitachi on what makes a society happy, what makes a society I like the word resonant, so to where people still speak to each other, where people learn from each other, where people actually feel satisfied by their activities. And I think so my vision is that transport planning is much more moving in a way away from, for example, measuring just efficiency, or measuring just emissions, or measuring happiness in a very, there's well-being research, but it's often a very narrow scale. I think we have to go much broader, and we have to also understand the limits of engineering. With what I mean with that is things being, or one of the big pleasures in life, or one of the big pleasures in life, I would say, is being surprised. Being having a surprise meeting on the street, just meeting someone, having something turning out to be better than you expected, or something having gone wrong and then it was repaired again. And as an engineer, we are trying to take away this surprise, right? We try to, in my research, we always want the bus to become on time. We always want everything to be perfect. And especially we model it also in as a transport system, right? We model it as something that we aim to be at a system optimal, and that's always working function. But that's not what will make life in the end rich. So my vision is that I hope I can contribute to much more to a discussion of what actually the role of transport planning for a truly well-being society is. and particularly with a focus on public transport. Yeah.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.
Lastly, finally, would you give a message to the young civil engineer about or students?
Let me target it at young professionals, young international professionals in Japan.
Okay.
And so maybe a bit from my experience, I would say if you start your professional career in engineering in Japan, of course, it's very important to adjust to Japanese working culture. And sometimes it might be very different to what people have been used to from their upbringing, and sometimes it might be frustrating. But there's also many good parts to Japanese work culture. And in the university, for example, the togetherness, the concept of research laboratory is very important and very and much better than in many other countries. So, but again, on the one side, adjust and have a good contact to Japanese colleagues. So again, without them, I wouldn't have been able to do most of the things that I'm doing now. On the other side, also, it's important to not become fully Japanese, I would say. With that, I mean, like, I think keep well, to be specific, well, for example, in terms of working time, for example, in terms of communication, how I communicate or how I communicate with students also. Maybe it's a bit different to what Japanese colleagues do. Or sometimes taking holidays or things like that. Well, if I would just try to fully adjust to Japanese culture, maybe I would lose most of my strengths. So I have to keep some of my own identity as well, and finding this balance, that's a challenge, but that's something I think that people can be aware of, or that people can help to I think being aware that there are these two things, that on one side, learning Japanese is very important and adjusting, but on the other side, also keeping your independence and using the strengths such as the links that we might have to our home countries and to other internationals, and bringing that in. So finding this balance, that's, I think, crucial.
なるほど。もう面白いです。ありがとうございます。